morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Jan McInnis, comedian and keynote speaker for theworklady.com. Welcome to the show, Jan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Jan, I appreciate you coming on the show. You have a really interesting background as a comedian and as a keynote speaker. But one of the things that I saw is you wrote for The Tonight Show for Jay Leno.
I did freelance, sell jokes, on the side. It was fun. Yeah. He used to have, for comedians, he used to have a fax number. I'm old enough to remember fax. And I know for those of you who don't know what that is, it was amazing technology.
It was like email right over the telephone, basically.
Yeah. And you could fax in jokes, and then you'd get just a check in the mail from his company, and you could call his assistant, and she'd say, like, oh, yeah, that's the balloon joke or whatever. And it was really fun. Yeah.
Nice. So let's talk about some of your other background. You had a syndicated cartoon strips, right? You wrote for that.
Material. I've sold jokes to that material, humor. Yep.
And you've written a couple books. What are the titles of those?
One is Finding the Funny Fast, How to Create Quick Humor to Connect with Clients, Coworkers, and Crowds. Some of the tips I talk about in my keynotes and today, maybe. And also the other one is Convention Comedian, Stories and Wisdom from 2 decades of Chicken Dinners and Comedy Clubs.
I like that. That's great. So one of the things I saw a couple of the videos of you speaking at different conventions, and the way you impart humor, and I think this is the reason why I thought you would be somebody good to bring on to help PIOs, not during the crisis, but out in the public and doing an event, speaking to a crowd, or maybe a town hall meeting, and trying to relax the crowd and engage them, right? I mean, I think that's where sometimes humor can be used, right?
Right. It's a great way to kind of not change the energy, if you will, kick off tough conversations, or just kick off, like you said, you want to grab people's attention. You want to get people to want to listen to you, get people to remember you, make you approachable. You want people to afterwards maybe ask about what you were talking about. Use a little bit of humor. And I want to really make a distinction when I talk about using humor in business, whatever business you're in. I'm not talking about being a comedian. I'm not talking about joke. Hey, I'm going to make you laugh. It's more about finding the humor in the situation and bringing that forward. And it's a muscle. You got to practice it. You got to be, and I give ideas for places to look, but it's not, you're not supposed to be a comedian. The only time you need to be belly laugh killer funny is in a comedy club. If you're not, trust me, they get mad. But otherwise,
let's talk about how public information officers can use humor in some of the work that they do.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you do a variety of work, and obviously, thank you for mentioning it's not disaster. It's not, you're not making fun of that. You can use it in, your bio, the simplest thing. What do we send out when we send out information about ourselves? Hi, my name is Jan. I went to this school. I played football at high school. Have a little bit of fun. Let people know you have a sense of humor. Put something fun in there. Websites, certainly there's places you can put, about us sections where you can have some fun with, tell a little bit about the history of the organization or the event, fun facts, weird history facts. You can toss in some fun things like that to let people know that you've got a good sense of humor and I
think that's something that for a little while when the internet, or I should say when social media first kind of made it into law enforcement and they started using Facebook, there was points where humor was used, and I think what ended up happening is they got a little carried away with it, and they went too far in a lot of cases, and then agencies pulled back and said, no, we don't want to use humor like that because it can become offensive if you do it wrong.
Right.
If you do too much, people get kind of turned off by it because they think all you're doing is joking around.
Right. That's even with comedians. Have you ever met a comedian off stage? They just won't stop. I mean, they're annoying, right? but yeah, it's well placed. It's using it just a little bit to your advantage. I don't know. You sit down to a staff meeting. You just had some big thing. If you don't address it, people think, oh, he or she doesn't know what we're going through. If you do address it, or if you go to speak in public, some big thing that's happened, you can address it really quick with just a little bit of humor and move on. And people go, oh, okay, yeah, they know what we're dealing with.
Good point. You brought up, in an event or talking before, and I saw something that you did where like almost asking a survey question.
Oh, so I talk about getting the big elephant out on the table. So if you've had something you want to kind of address it really quick, again, not super serious, but something you want to let people know that, hey, I know what's going on. You can use a little bit of humor. Comedians call it addressing what people see first. As a comedian, if I get on stage and I'm really overweight, or I'm really tall, or I have a noticeable disability, or I look like a famous comedian, I look like Jerry Seinfeld or something. If I don't say something about it, people spend the whole time like, gosh, she looks like Jerry Seinfeld. They won't listen to what you're saying. But you can address it by you can get the big elephant on the table by addressing it first. And I say sometimes you can blurt things out and just address it. I use an example of my brother going to dinner with him and his wife and their 3 boys to a Mexican restaurant, and my 12-year-old nephew Patrick ordered the fiesta platter, which was the size of Mexico. It was pretty big. And after the check came, and I grabbed the check, and my brother's trying to get the check. We're doing that whole check tussle thing, And a couple minutes in, Patrick blurts out, "Dad, let her have it. We don't know how much this thing cost." So he kind of got the big elephant out. But sometimes we can't. You want to bring it out, but you can't. So right. Comedians have a couple of tricks. If something has happened ahead of us on stage and we want to change the energy, we do like a survey. Hey, quick survey. How many people think blah, blah, blah? And I've used a survey method quite a bit. Did it at I think it was a corporate event years ago, right after the Super Bowl. And I guess the CEO had spent the entire Super Bowl Sunday watching the game and then making this really boring analogy between life and the Super Bowl and trying to motivate everybody, and he was bombing. Wasn't going over well. People were kind of looking at their phones, falling asleep. So after about 5 minutes, he ran off and pushes me out there. I can't go right into it. I can't go right into my message. I can't, I got to change this energy. So I use a survey method. I went on, hey, quick survey. How many people hope next year during the Super Bowl, Bill does like the rest of us and just drinks a beer? All right. Great way to kind of get out what's going on. I had license to have fun with him, but, just to acknowledge what's going on in a fun way.
It's funny that you bring it up that way. So my son has a friend that is in a wheelchair, and he's been in that all his life. He's a great kid. He's got a fantastic sense of humor, and he's very witty. So he substitute teaches. So he was at school, and he comes into class in his wheelchair, and he's got a little bit of a issue with his jawline too. And one of the kids finally asks a question, "What happened to you?" And he says, and he just shoots back. He goes, "I didn't listen to the substitute teacher in the class I had."
Yay! That funny, great, yeah.
I mean, if it is perfect, and that is so him. That is his wit. He is that quick, and it was just. And I heard that, I just laughed out loud because I'm like, that's him. Yeah, he's just that way.
It's so disarming. A friend of mine who's a comedian, Brett Leake, has muscular dystrophy. He doesn't have an act about it. He has one joke. He said because otherwise he's going to get on stage and people are going to spend the whole time thinking, does he know he has muscular dystrophy? Maybe we should tell. They won't. So you bring it up. So it's a fun way just to acknowledge quickly, or kicking off, like you said, a public event or something. There's so many things you can acknowledge when you get there that are common at the event that'll get people just to laugh. And again, you're not trying to be a comedian, just to kind of a laugh, change the energy,
right.
Type of a laugh,
So you mentioned the word you mentioned finding the funny fast. Let's talk about that and how can some examples for what a public information officer can do.
Well, a couple of quick ways, because humor is a muscle. So I tell people you've got to start looking for it, start looking around, and for example, for the ironies and the disconnects. Ironies are a great way to find humor really quickly. I don't know. I did an event one time, or looking around the room, and you can see, the ironies. When I walk into a room, I just start looking. I look at the agenda. I look at the temperature. I look at the crowd. I look what's going on and pull these things out. I did an event once where the speaker ahead of me, Keith Ferrazzi, was speaking on, he was networking, and the title of his talk was "Never Eat Lunch Alone." Right after him on the agenda was "Lunch on Your Own." Okay, but we don't notice this stuff because we're not paying attention. So ironies are a really great way to kind of pull out some humor fast and have some fun. Analogies are great, have some fun with that. Humor is also about using extremes. If you listen to any comedian, we talk about things. Somebody isn't 100 years old, they're 1,000 years old. They don't weigh 100 pounds, they weigh 10,000 pounds. We look at everything like it's a problem, and we ask the question, how would I solve this if I could solve this any way I want? And we come up with some fun, extreme solutions. And that's where some humor is. So quick ways you can do it. Acronyms. I mean, if you just want to do some easy humor, to get people laughing, and maybe they'll read your email or your memo or whatever. I think all of our businesses are full of acronyms. How many people have not, spoken a complete sentence since you took the job? And change the definition. Have some fun with those really quick, fast ways to add humor in and get people laughing and maybe, okay, I want to read this. This is funny.
Yeah, many years ago, I was doing some training, and I had to drive from Illinois to Indiana, and you're going back in a time zone. So I miscalculated the time, got there like 30 minutes late, and I walk into this convention hall, and it is wall to wall people, and I'm getting my computer set up, I'm getting, there are guys that are helping me with technology, and somebody goes, "Why are you late?" And I said, "You know what?" He goes, "I got stopped by one of you guys on the way here, and they gave me a ticket." Just absolute silence, and everybody's like, "You got a ticket?" I go, "Yeah, I got a ticket." And then he drove me here with lights and siren. That's how I got here quicker. And everybody busts out laughing, so they all kind of knew it was kind of a joke.
Yeah.
It diffused a very tense situation. Yes, I was late. I screwed up on the time, but do I tell them I didn't realize the time change, and when I did the conversion of the drive, would that have been funny? No, it would have just made everybody mad.
And it's it is a great tool, and it kind of quiets people down too. We don't really need to know why you're late now. We get it. So yeah, I think it's a tool, and I think it's a tool that people don't use enough because they don't think they can. They think, that's for comedians, So they don't look at it as, I can use humor, but there are ways to use humor.
And I think in everyday law enforcement, the use of humor can be done, especially when you're in a tense situation, and you can find some humor in something that might help everybody just laugh, because laughter, it is infectious. And if somebody's laughing, really, they can't get angry. That laughter just, doesn't it? Am I right?
It's the only emotion, one of my clients told me this, that the only emotion you cannot multitask. Like, you could be crying and typing out that letter to someone who broke up with you, but you can't be laughing and doing the same thing. Of course, my thought is, what about laughing and wetting your pants? You can still do that, okay?
Yeah, I can see that.
Kids are always kind of pulling out the humor because they don't get it, those disconnects. I joked about my nephew, but my sister was in the car. She got a speeding ticket with her 5-year-old in the car, which is not the person you want to get a speeding ticket with, right? After the officer left, her daughter's like, "Well, Mommy, how do you know how fast to go?" My sister's like, "Well, there are signs all along the highway." And her daughter's like, "Well, can't you read?" She's kind of pulling out the ironies, the disconnects,
Right.
They just do it naturally because they don't get it. Like, why would you ignore the law?
They don't have a filter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so think like a 5-year-old. What would look at it with fresh eyes, and what would they think? You get a lot of humor if you don't do pre-thinking. You just go into the situation and go, okay,
All right, so you've talked about this changing energy. How do you do? Where does that come into play? Changing energy in a room. You walk in, it's ice cold, or everybody's got their head in their phone. I'll tell you what, worst time to do a presentation, after lunch.
After lunch, I brought in a lot of after lunch, and acknowledge it, but with some fun. What did they have for lunch? Just start asking questions so you can pull out the humor. What did they have for lunch? Why'd they put me after lunch? What, who, what, when, where, why? And you can come up with some fast humor. Again, it's a muscle. So start thinking about it. And then when you really want to use it, you can. But I walk into a room and I've got a whole list of stuff. I start looking around, the temperature, the people, the agenda, seating assignments, I did an event one time at a hospital, and very nice event, but they had dried flowers in the middle of the table, these huge, huge decorations. And so, good joke, how good is this hospital if they can't even keep the plants alive because dried flowers? But it got a nice laugh, and you got to say it in a nice tone, and certainly know we'll talk about a few rules in using humor. But
okay, yeah, let's talk about those rules, because I think that might be important. That was kind of a question I was getting to, but it's a good time to talk about it.
Sure. In comedy clubs, pretty much anything, the only rule is be funny. They don't care. They know what you're about. Whatever it is you're going to talk about, whether you're dirty, whether you're religious, whatever it is, just be funny. But when you're using humor in business, you really want to pay attention. First of all, common sense, sex, drugs, rock and roll, probably politics. Stay away from those jokes. I would say a big rule: never make fun or joke about something that you are not a member of. If you're bald, you can have fun with bald. If you're overweight, you can have fun with that. If you're not, just stay away from that sort of stuff. Watch it when it comes to women. I always say, you can kind of goof with guys. Even in comedy clubs, the woman has to be really drunk and everyone has to hate her before you can even say anything.
That's the mad heckler, right? The one that
the bad heckler. Yeah, but usually I didn't get heckled a whole lot, but just stay away from and don't say something. I know this sounds very obvious, but don't say something to someone that you wouldn't say to their face. I have conference calls with clients ahead of time, and you would be amazed how many times they're like, "Oh yeah, make fun of her hair or his divorce." No, that's not what. Don't go for the low, mean, cheap shot. Even if it'll get you a big laugh. I did an event one time where they had 4,400 people, and they ran out of dinner for 1,500 people. All right,
Ooh.
and it was their employee appreciation banquet, and it was plated.
Very appreciative, right?
Yeah, right. And they miscounted. It wasn't like a buffet. They miscounted. Now, a comedian, of course, I can get on stage and pull the curtain back and go, "Hey, I found them," and joke around. I didn't, because the conference planner was backstage crying in tears because she was about to lose her job. So watch doing the easy, low, or the obvious jokes. I did an event for 500 blind merchants. I was the only sighted person in the room. Comedian, I want to get on stage and go, "Hey, I'm naked." Good joke, joke. No, they said, in fact, they put in my contract, no blind humor. We've heard it all. There's not a thing you can say we haven't heard. And they were very fun. They had a great sense of humor, but they're right. They've heard it all. So watch sort of the obvious. And I did a show for postmasters, and my friends were like, "Oh yeah, going postal." No, they've lived through that. That's not something.
Yeah, that's really the low hanging fruit, right? Yeah.
Yeah, watch that. But my biggest tip would be true to yourself. When you want to do humor, find the humor that you think is funny, and you'll sell it better, and you'll enjoy doing it, and people will enjoy listening to it. So if you like knock jokes, do those. If you like just fun cartoons, use
Right.
those. I mean, do the stuff you think is fun.
You brought up don't say something like that would be offensive to someone else. There's like a fine line there. I go back to the comedian Matt Rife that has been brutal. He's been beaten up pretty bad, and he made a comment about a domestic violence thing that got him into a lot of trouble. And there is a fine line. You can go to a certain spot, and if you go beyond that line, it usually.
Well, and you know what? I started to watch his Netflix thing the other night. Actually, I don't watch a lot of comedians, so I didn't get through it very far. Everyone has a different brand of humor. But like I said, comedians in comedy clubs, you can pretty much, as long as you're funny, as long as there's a punchline, and the club that books you normally knows if you're going to speak on this subject or this is what you're about. And the audience, he's got a big enough audience that they know what he's going to talk about. If it's funny, it's funny. It's not what I would do. And it certainly is not what you should do in business, but it's what he would do, and it's what his crowd like. And that is sort of it's hard to explain, but that's a standard. That's what he wants to do. And that's what he's got a following for. If he wants to do that, do it in comedy clubs. He won't work where I do. He won't work in the corporate, and he wouldn't be a model for the corporate. So I can't condemn it. It's what he does. It's what he's been famous for doing, I guess. I don't know.
Did we talk about what people addressing what people see first for the humor end of it?
Yeah, I was talking about when you get on stage as a comedian, if you're really tall or really overweight, you want to kind of say something about it. Otherwise, people spend the whole time like, does she know he's really tall, 6'5"? I know, was it Louis Anderson used to start, he's kind of a large guy. He would start off his shows by picking up the microphone stand and moving it over, go, "Now you can see me." Funny, because he's a big guy. But then you don't have to say it anymore if you don't want to talk anymore about it. But if he goes through this whole act, if you're really large or really tall and you don't say a thing about it, people have a little hard time. Really? Does she know, or he knows he's 7 feet tall, right? And they kind of, that's in their head the whole time. So clearly,
I'm kind of short, so like there have been times when somebody will look at me and I'm on ground level and I'm talking to a fairly large crowd in a training event, and you could see them looking at you, and I'm trying to talk to everybody in the back, and I said, I used to be 6 feet tall, but then my wife, she just kept hitting me in the head, and I've shrunken down to 5'3". So I've learned not to argue with my wife.
Very fun. Yeah, nice way to like let everyone know. Okay, I get it. You're having trouble seeing in the back or whatever.
Yeah.
I did that, and I don't know if this is probably an old reference for some of your listeners, but I was in a comedy club years ago, and I had to follow this really young hip comic, and I'm like, okay, I'm a bit older than these people, but I got on stage and I said, I know you heard a woman comic coming to the stage. You were hoping for some young, hot, sexy 21-year-old. Instead, you get me, the mom from the show Family Ties. Bear Backs of Bernie, because that time I looked kind of like her. And so they got a big laugh, and it was a nice way to kind of acknowledge I'm not the young hip that you're going to see. I look more like a mom,
Nice.
Yeah.
How can PIOs ride that line without being offensive? I think that's kind of something that's very important. That if they're going to try humor, where does that line go?
I really, really think common sense. Run it through is it going to hurt someone? Is it going to be hurtful? No, then you don't do it. Is it a low shot? Don't do it. Is it funny? Do you think it truly will be funny to other people? Is it, obviously it's not dirty. You're not, those kind of things really is a common sense thing. It's you just know something's funny, and it's pretty easy to joke. You can joke about the weather. You can joke about the room setup. You can joke about, not being able to see. You can joke about yourself. Self-deprecating humor is great. I joke about my big feet, size 12 AAA feet. Great way to do it, to kick off and have some fun with something about you. And I can't tell you how many times people come up and go, oh my gosh, I have a size 13, or I have a big foot too. Where do you shop? So stick to subjects that are, if you're really nervous, start out by sticking to stuff about yourself, and have some fun with that.
Have you ever seen the Polk County Sheriff speak? He's from Florida. Big tall guy. He always gets up. He's always holding pictures up on the podium when he's talking about a crime.
No.
He's an interesting. If you ever get a chance, Google Polk County Sheriff in Florida, and it'll come up. And I can't think of his name for the life of me right now. But he'll hold a picture up and he'll talk about this person that they arrested, and sometimes he throws out some zingers on these guys. And
I bet there's a lot of.
And he's an elected official, so politically, he's not worried about it. He's been reelected. I don't know. He's been down there forever. But I think of his humor, he can get away with it because he's the highest elected official in the sheriff's department down there. So
and he obviously knows his audience and knows who he's talking to, and knows, even the language. I mean, like I always say, don't cuss, but if your group, if you can use a little saltier language, if that's who you you're talking with, and
right.
and they always have, I've done events for like corrections groups and things like that, and they deal with some weird stuff, man. They have some weird, and you gotta say, talk about it. The same jokes, the same things I would talk about with the corrections, I would not talk about with the bankers. It's just
Grady Judd is the sheriff's name. If you ever want to Google it, watch some of the videos. Oh my God, there's some. He's got some great zingers in there. And he's talking about a lot of bad crime, but he finds a way to show how ridiculous some of the crime that these people are committing is in his own way, and he's very good
and that's fun to point that stuff out. You know what? And I talk about not cussing. I did one event where I did cuss once, and it rocked. I was doing a series of events for all the managers around the country of Pep Boys. I was doing about 4 or 5 cities. I sat through some of their sessions during the day, and one of the sessions was on communication, and they had a blindfolded one guy, and another guy was telling him how to make a peanut butter sandwich, and it was very funny, very miscommunication. So that night I was on stage, and I just said, you know what, I saw that communication session where the guy was blindfolded and the other guy was telling him how to make a sandwich. He said, if you've got an employee so stupid he doesn't know how to make a peanut butter sandwich, fire his butt and send him over to AutoZone. The place went nuts.
Oh,
but because I used it, I knew what I was doing. I wasn't doing gratuitous cussing. I got hired for a bunch more events after that. I wasn't trying to be gross or anything, but I knew they would be fine with that because they probably hear a lot saltier language. But it really was fun say that, but haven't done it since.
I think I cussed once at an event, and it was I tripped over something while I was, I tend to wander when I talk, I try and move and keep them engaged that way, and I tripped and I dropped an F bomb,
Oh,
and I was mortified. I thought for sure I was going to get, and I just looked at everybody and I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm such an idiot. I tripped. And everybody goes, like, literally, I want to say most of the people in the room all go, we don't effing care.
and you make that connection,
It
right?
was like, oh my God, I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay. So afterwards, I went and I talked to the person that was managing the event, and I said, I'm really sorry about that. He goes, I don't think you had to worry about it. Did you hear what they said? I go, yeah. I go, thank God. Yes, that's what happened exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect. Well, and paying attention to the room when the people in the room is a good way to not get yourself in trouble as well. I did an event one time. It was for education group, it was years ago, and I got myself in trouble because it was mostly women. But there was a young guy, really good looking, looked like about 22, 23, right out of college, back in the back of the room, being very quiet and not wanting any attention. But I didn't pay attention to the whole room. I didn't pay attention to him. I just saw a young guy. I thought I could goof with him, and so I started joking about dating, and the jokes went great. But I noticed he was kind of really backing off, and I thought about two jokes in, I thought, okay, I've stepped in something that wasn't very nice. So I moved away. Afterwards, a client came up and said, "Oh, we're so glad you had fun with Tom or whatever." He never talks about dating, and I thought, oh, I felt horrible because I know it was something that I shouldn't have. He didn't want any attention. I wasn't paying attention. That he was kind of way in the
Mm-hmm.
back, trying to stay away from stuff. And so I didn't get in trouble with the client, but I felt terrible because I do not want to make someone uncomfortable with the humor, and I did. So I learned a good lesson. Pay attention to the situational awareness, the surroundings. And you said that drop the F bomb, and they all shouted back. I mean, I know you're probably thinking the whole speech. Oh gosh, I got to talk to the
Oh,
client.
I thought for sure I was gonna get, I was gonna get pulled
Yeah.
out of the room. But that happened, and I was like, I just breathed a sigh of relief. I said that's never happened again. And I stood still the rest of the training that I did. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was, whew, scary, scary.
Surreal too, but and the fact that you shouldn't have said, like some people would say it, just keep going, and it's like you knew you shouldn't have said that and kind of acknowledged it. That was great. That's a way to get back at, and you're being real. You're being human.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
I agree.
using
That's kind of
humor.
like what you got to
Yeah,
do that, right? I mean, that's the only thing you can do is try it and make sure you connect with your audience in any way, shape, or form, and
yeah,
by admitting I screwed up.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. I tripped once. Oh my gosh, I was emceeing a 3-day event, and they had these big IMAX screens with the big feet sticking out, and the whole 3 days. I'm so cognizant about that. Like I do not. I had to step over it to get to the stage. Last thing I did, walked off the stage, boom, right on my butt. And people jumped up and oh, and more people are more happy that it's not them that did it.
Hmm.
So, but I was like, oh, I didn't cuss, but I was so like, I worked for 3 days to step over those things.
Yeah, I did an event we were on a stage. It was an elevated stage, and there was 3 or 4 of us up there on a panel, and then they were going to go to a video, so the lights went down, and everybody walked off, and I left my phone sitting on the table. I went to grab it, turned around, and walked off the stage, and dropped 4 feet because I literally missed the stairs. Luckily, it was pitch black; nobody could see anything. I jumped up real quick. I was like, "Whew, safe, no problem."
People are just happy it didn't happen to them, and things like that. Like I acknowledge, I was doing a big MC event for Lockheed Martin years
Oh,
too,
yeah.
and it was their awards banquet, and it was so funny because they'd call out a winner, and the winner would come up on the step. The steps were behind the curtain, and they'd come out. And I was able to acknowledge. I said, realize the steps are behind the curtain because they can trust you to build multi-billion-dollar missiles, but they don't trust you to walk up a set of stairs in front of the audience without tripping. And got a huge laugh. But it's kind of true. They don't want anyone to have a misstep going up there. So you
Yeah,
do.
yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. All the stuff that's happened to Boeing in the last 6 months to a
Oh,
year. I couldn't even imagine like doing a convention at Boeing and then going, you got to be careful with Boeing because you never know, a door might fly off or a wing or
Oh, and you got,
see,
yeah.
you can't throw those zingers out there anymore,
No,
can you?
no, you can't. And I mean, I had fun with them because we also did it in a train station, Union Station in DC. And I'm like, well, missile company, I guess Amtrak is having theirs at Cape Canaveral, something like that. It was fun. Now, you talk about serious subjects. Pretty much any industry, you can have some humor, but sometimes not direct humor. Like COVID, very serious. You cannot joke about COVID, but you can joke about the stuff around COVID. The weird masks. People are making masks out of all sorts of stuff. The weight gain, staying 6 feet apart. You can joke about some of the stuff that's happening around it, possibly, but you don't joke. Make COVID jokes. To me,
Right,
that's
right.
not funny because
Yeah,
very serious.
absolutely.
People are getting very sick. But sometimes
Yeah.
there's you can do that. Yeah.
What else can you add to this as a way for humor to be brought in either in public safety writing or in how they communicate just in general?
Yeah, well, speeches, writing, websites, press releases, I mean, any kind of communication, look for the ironies, look for the disconnects, look for the analogies, look for different definitions, look around you. Even when you're writing a press release, do a little research. What are funny facts or weird facts or things you can bring out about the town, about the whatever? People like to read that stuff. And it's always something you can have fun with, even if you're not, you mentioned something in the press release about, I don't know, some city water something. I don't know. What is a fun
I,
fact about city water? What is a fun fact about you can go look into?
yeah, those are things I think that I think we forget about because we tend to be very serious about press releases.
Yeah,
But in some cases, when maybe it's a press release about I don't know, an event that you're going to have, and you could say, yeah, last year we had 300 people show up and we only had 200 hot dogs or something.
yeah, have some
Something stupid.
fun.
Yeah,
Get there earlier. Well, it's like a headlines. To use humor can also grab attention with headlines. Think of, I don't know if you remember, Jay Leno used to have those wacky headlines that were really printed. If you read I know a guy who runs an engineering firm, but he always made his new hires, new engineers who are going to do writing for him, read weird things like the Weekly World News and all those kind of crazy tabloids because they know how to grab attention. So we read weird stuff. That those writers are brilliant. They can, alien, Elvis found on Mars or something, but it makes you want to read the article, right?
right.
So he used to make, and so as someone who does a lot of writing, go read other things that are stupid, fake, whatever, the Weekly World News, total,
Right,
made
the
up stuff.
Inquirer, whatever it might be, right? Yeah.
Right, because they know how to grab your attention. You're not gonna make up a story like that, but they know how to kind of get your attention and get you thinking funny or
Right,
different.
right. All right, Jay, let's change this up. Let's go to some rapid fire questions.
Okay, ready.
Talking or texting?
Talking.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Coffee or tea?
I'm a new coffee drinker. Last year.
Adult drink of choice?
Oh, vodka, beer, wine. What do you want? Pick one.
What would be a superpower if you could have one?
To get from one end of the country to the other or any state in an instant instead of getting on a plane.
He's so nice. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Beg for forgiveness.
A place you most want to travel to?
I'm trying to get over to like Italy, somewhere like that, do some hiking.
Amalfi Coast.
Yeah.
First celebrity crush?
Didn't have one. I don't even know celebrities out here in Los Angeles. I don't even pay attention to them.
I think a lot of people are starting to turn away from that.
Maybe Lassie. I like animals.
Yeah. Guilty pleasure food?
Pizza and ice cream.
If you could have coffee with any historical figure, living or dead, who would it be?
Frances Perkins. She started everything from Social Security to, worked with FDR. Very fascinating. I read a book about it. Very, very, I don't know how she had time. She did more in a week than I'll do in my lifetime. Very interesting.
Wow. Final thoughts. What key points would you like our listeners to take from the interview today?
I like your listeners to try it. Go out and just give it start small. Comedians start with 2 minutes, 3 minutes at an open mic because we can't do 60 minutes. You don't want to hear us do 60 minutes. So start small. Start looking around. Start practicing. Pick one funny thing, one funny fact, one funny analogy, and start small and build from there. You'll get people hooked. You'll be hooked because you'll enjoy doing it. But don't don't shy away and be afraid and think it's for someone else. Really start looking around and trying to use your humor muscle.
And how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect, follow up, or maybe book you for a convention or something?
Hey, great. Go to my website. Nobody can spell my last name, McInnis. So we'll go with my website. I had to go with theworklady.com because I do a lot of work humor. So theworklady.com, Jan at theworklady.com. Those are best places to reach me.
And I will add all that into the show notes.
Super. Thanks.
And thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I appreciate your take on humor and providing an opportunity for public information officers and public affairs people to look for humor in a way to connect with their community. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.